My name is David Harper. I'm 43. Rachel was 41 when the ground beneath us started to shift. Quiet at first. Like the way a house settles in winter, harmless, you think, until the cracks in the walls start showing. If you'd asked me back then, stopped me at the gas station, or caught me folding laundry on a Saturday, I'd have told you we were solid. Not movie love, not fireworks and rooftop kisses, but something better. Stable. Worn in. Real. We lived in Hillwood Crest, a manicured cul-de-sac tucked just outside the city, one of those places where the sprinklers ran on timers and the neighbors waved even if they barely knew your name. We had 2 teenage daughters. And Max, our graying lab with a limp and a heart of gold. Rachel stayed home. I worked in hospital administration, long hours, thankless work, but it paid for everything. The house. The schools. Her hobbies. Our life. We had our rituals. Coffee at 6:15. Mine black with cinnamon, hers loaded with almond milk and local honey. She always played soft jazz in the mornings, left the bathroom light on too long, and wore this musky vanilla perfume that clung to the sheets like memory. She started humming again around this time. Some tune I didn't recognize. Always when she thought I wasn't listening. The humming was the first signal. I didn't know it then. But it was. The second came at the airport. Rachel had gone to visit her parents down in Charleston for a few days. I waited for her at arrivals with a hot latte and a half-dead bouquet of grocery store hydrangeas. She came out of the tunnel all smiles, not for me, but for the young guy walking beside her. He looked like he'd walked off a college brochure. Blonde, lean, maybe 22 at best. Green eyes, sharp jaw, rolling a suitcase that wasn't his. "This is Noah," she said, threading her arm through mine like we'd just started dating. We were C-mates. His parents know mine from the club. Small world. Noah stuck out his hand. "Thanks for picking us up, Mr. Harper." I shook it, nodding. Didn't correct him. Over the next few weeks, Noah became a fixture. At first, it made sense. He was doing an internship in the city, and Rachel, who'd always prided herself on being the welcoming type, suggested we help him adjust. Weekend lunches. Beach trips. Even invited him to church with us once. He was polite. Quiet. Almost too quiet. I didn't pay him much mind. Not at first. Then came the errands. Rachel started taking Noah shopping. "He needs a blazer for work," she'd say. "He's never had decent sushi." I promised I'd show him that new place on 9th. A couple of times she brought him to her friends' parties. I stayed home with the kids, grateful not to have to sit through another evening of Chardonnay gossip and polite sniping. Still, I remember how quiet the house felt without her. Not peaceful, empty. One night, she came back late from a movie with Noah. She had wind in her hair and that humming again. Same tune. Still unfamiliar. "You're up," she said, pausing at the porch where I sat nursing a bourbon. Couldn't sleep. She kissed my forehead like I was a child. "We should get away soon. Just you and me. Somewhere cold." She hated the cold. Always had. I smiled. Sure. That was the moment, if I'm being honest. The moment where something inside me shifted. Not panic. Not jealousy. Just quiet. Like the last second before the windshield cracks. But I didn't ask questions. Because part of me already knew I wouldn't like the answers. It started with a phone charger. Not hers. Not mine. A third one. One I hadn't seen before, tucked into the outlet behind the living room chair like it had been carelessly forgotten. I stared at it for a long time. Rachel didn't notice. She was humming again, always that same unfamiliar tune as she scrolled through something on her phone, face lit by the blue screen. I asked if Noah had been over. She blinked like I'd interrupted a dream. "No," she said quickly. "Why?" I shrugged. "Just thought maybe he stopped by." She shook her head too fast. "Nope. Haven't seen him this week." It wasn't a big deal. Just a charger. But my gut said otherwise. And once the gut feeling kicked in, it was like the lights in the house shifted. Suddenly, things didn't line up quite right anymore. She'd giggle at a text, then lock her phone. Startle when I walked into her room. She began dressing better even for errands. Tight jeans, lipstick during the day, the nice boots she usually saved for dinners out. I told myself I was imagining things. That maybe she was just trying to feel good about herself again. That maybe after 20 years you forget how women sometimes shift for no one but themselves. But it didn't sit right. One Thursday, I came home early, hospital systems went down, sent everyone home to reboot their lives as one nurse joked. Rachel wasn't expecting me. The garage was empty. So was the house. I went upstairs, looking for Max. He'd been limping worse lately. That's when I noticed the bed. Ours. Made but hastily. Her side of the sheets still warm. On the nightstand, a coffee mug that didn't belong to us. The logo said Jefferson Row Cafe, a place on the other side of town. We hadn't been there in over a year. I stood there for a full minute just staring at the mug, listening. Then I heard it, the sound of the back door opening. Rachel walked in, keys jingling, cheeks flushed. She stopped when she saw me at the top of the stairs. "Hey," she said carefully. "You're home early." "I am." She smiled, too bright. "I was just grabbing a few things for dinner. Want to go out tonight? Somewhere nice." "Sure," I said. "How was the cafe?" Her smile faltered. Just for a second. Then it came back stronger. "What cafe?" I held up the mug. "Oh, that?" A pause. "Noah gave it to me. He said it reminded him of home." I nodded. "Right? Because he's from Charleston." She blinked. "No. Asheville." Silence. She moved past me, brushing my arm as she did, then paused at the hallway. "You're acting weird lately, David," she said softly. "Everything okay?" "Just tired." That night, we went out to dinner. She laughed, told stories, flipped her hair like we were on a first date. But her eyes were scanning, watching the door, the waiters, every passing face. I noticed how she held her wine glass, fingers lingering where a lipstick mark sat like a flag. Like a reminder she had been there. A week later, I checked our shared credit card. 2 charges jumped out: Luca's, a boutique hotel downtown. 2 Saturdays in a row. Mid-afternoon. I stared at the screen so long my coffee went cold. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to be sure, not because I didn't believe what I was seeing, but because part of me still wanted to be wrong. Because once I opened that door, I knew everything behind it would catch fire. So I started paying closer attention. She said she was going to Dana's for dinner. But Dana's husband posted a photo on Instagram, tagged out of state, visiting family. She said she had a charity meeting, but came home without her planner or notes. Her hair was curled in a way I hadn't seen in years. Perfume still fresh. One night, I tested something. I told her I was flying to a conference. I wasn't. I stayed in a hotel 10 minutes from our house. Checked in under a different name. I watched our Ring camera feed from my phone. She didn't bring anyone in. But she left. Hair done. Red lipstick. That humming again as she walked out the door like it was any other Tuesday. When she came home 3 hours later, she was barefoot, mascara slightly smudged, and carrying 2 bags from a store that had closed months ago. My chest felt tight. Like a slow-motion car crash, I couldn't stop. This wasn't proof. Not yet. But it was smoke. And I was starting to see flames. I didn't sleep much after that. I'd lie awake and count the cracks in the ceiling, the ones I used to ignore. I'd listen for every footstep, every sigh, every flick of her phone screen lighting up in the dark. She stopped sleeping facing me. I don't know when that happened. But now her back was always turned. And her phone? Always on silent. Always screen down. I started tracking patterns. Mondays she was home. Tuesdays and Thursdays were errand days. Wednesday evenings were girls' night, though I hadn't seen Dana's car outside our house in weeks. Friday afternoons Rachel disappeared for me time. It became clockwork. And clockwork is easy to follow. I started small. I checked our shared calendar. A doctor's appointment that didn't exist. A spa booking she never went to. Once she told me she was volunteering at the animal shelter, so I called them, said I was dropping off a donation and wanted to surprise my wife. They didn't have any record of a Rachel Harper. Ever. I still didn't confront her. Instead, I made a folder. A quiet little folder on my laptop called Taxes. Inside it, I began saving screenshots, photos, timestamps. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was beyond anger. I was studying her the way a doctor studies a tumor, something foreign inside the body, spreading. Then came Noah. He stopped coming around as much. But when he did, it was never announced. I'd find him at our kitchen counter laughing with her, sipping coffee like he'd lived there all his life. His laugh grated on me not because it was fake, but because it wasn't. It was genuine. He was comfortable. Too comfortable. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs and found him sitting at the dining table, shirtless, eating cereal. Rachel was nowhere to be seen. He smiled like this was normal. She's in the shower. I stared at him for a long beat. You stay here often? Noah shrugged. Only when she asks. That night, I bought a burner phone. I registered it under a fake name. Then I downloaded a voice modulator app and created a new number. I messaged Noah. Hey man. This is Jess. From the party. You still seeing that older woman? He responded in under 10 minutes. LOL ya man. Still on and off. Her husband's clueless. You know how it is. That message, those exact words, I must have read them a dozen times. I didn't eat that night. I didn't speak. I just sat in the living room staring at the wall while Rachel hummed that same song upstairs, unaware that her whole symphony was falling apart. The next day, I installed a hidden camera in the living room tucked behind a hollowed-out book on the shelf. Another one in the guest room. A third in the garage, facing the side door. It felt wrong. Dirty. But I needed the truth. I needed it. A week passed before I caught anything. Tuesday. 2:44 p.m. Rachel walks in, alone. 15 minutes later, Noah shows up. They talk. Laugh. She touches his wrist. He touches her waist. Then they disappear off camera, upstairs. When they came down, she was adjusting her blouse. No kiss. No embrace. Just a businesslike goodbye. That was the worst part. There was no romance in it. No passion. Just routine. They had done this before. I watched the footage 3 times. Then I copied it onto a flash drive and locked it in my office drawer. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like watching my own funeral in third person. That night at dinner, Rachel asked me if I'd ever consider going on a silent retreat. I read they're good for the soul, she said, sipping her red wine. I looked at her over my plate. Her lips were stained red. Her eyes sparkled. Yeah, I said. I think that's exactly what I need. For someone who is slowly unraveling, I was holding up surprisingly well. I was still making coffee at 6:18. Still walking with Max around the block. Still kissing Rachel on the cheek before I left for work, even though every part of me recoiled slightly at the smell of her perfume, the same perfume she'd worn from the beginning. It used to remind me of home. Now it reminded me of the lie I was living. And then came our anniversary. 20 years. 20 years of marriage, and she barely looked up from her phone when I handed her the card. She smiled, firmly, politely, the kind of smile you give a colleague when they tell a joke you don't quite get. That's nice, she said. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I didn't. I had booked a table at Lysica, one of those white tablecloth, imported olive oil places where everything on the menu was in foam, and the waiter, whose name you had to pretend to remember, was not the type to remember. Rachel was wearing a black silk dress that I hadn't seen in years. I was wearing a suit that she said made me look like a young Harrison Ford, while she still looked at me as if she saw something to be desired. The waiter greeted us like royalty. Rachel ordered sea bass. I ordered a steak. She said she didn't drink, but then changed her mind and asked for a glass of Malbec. We made small talk about the kids, the dog, the neighbor's lawn, and for about 10 minutes I allowed myself to pretend. To pretend that I didn't know what I knew. To pretend that I wasn't sitting across from a woman who had allowed another man to lie between our sheets. The check came. I paid it. She didn't offer. She didn't even reach for her purse. This used to bother me. But it doesn't bother me anymore. When we got home, she went upstairs to take a shower. I stayed downstairs and poured myself a glass of good bourbon, the kind I was saving for the next milestone that really meant something. I turned on the TV, but I didn't watch it. I was looking at her purse on the bench by the doorway. Rachel was always careful. Always locked her phone. Always deleted messages. But today she had left her bag unzipped. I stared at her like she was a rattlesnake. Then, slowly, I reached inside. The phone. My wallet. Lipstick. A key card to the hotel. Bose. Room 407. I laughed. Out loud. A short, sharp one that scared Max so much that he looked up. Room 407. The same hotel as before. She hadn't even changed her seat. Part of me respected this laziness. The other part of me wanted to go there and wait in the hallway with a bottle of wine and a poster. Surprise. It's still adultery. Instead, I put the key card back in and zipped up my purse. A minute later, she came downstairs in a bathrobe, smelling of soap and shampoo. Do you want to see something? She asked. I looked up, still holding the bourbon. Sure. We watched some ridiculous cooking competition. Once she laughed too hard at something that wasn't funny. I smiled. Are you okay? She suddenly asked, looking at me with a sharp look. Yes, I'm fine. I'm just tired. She leaned her head on my shoulder. The same shoulder she had leaned on in the hospital waiting room the day our youngest broke her arm. The same shoulder that held her when her mother died. That shoulder. And I let her. Because sometimes it's easier to sit in the fire than to stand up and shout fire. Later that night, I found myself in the garage with Max at my feet and my laptop open, looking through Noah's old Instagram posts. Harmless stuff, mostly gym selfies, beach shots, a few vague quotes about growth and passion. But one of them caught my attention. A selfie. He's on a hotel bed, shirtless, smiling. The signature, room 407. Only good vibes. Posted 6 months ago. I almost spilled my drink. I looked at Max. Do you believe this shit? He wagged his tail, completely unfazed. Probably just glad someone else was finally talking during bourbon hour. And then it hit me, the absurdity of it all. 20 years of marriage, and now I was hunting for breadcrumbs on an intern's Instagram feed like a crazy version of Sherlock Holmes. I giggled again, softer this time. "You've really outdone yourself, Ratch," I muttered. The thing was, there was still a part of me that didn't want to burn it all down. There was still a part of me that thought that maybe, just maybe, it could be saved. Maybe we were two broken people clinging to the memory of something that once worked. Maybe I could forgive. Maybe she would stop. And then she came into the garage. "Hi," she said, blinking against the light. "Are you going to bed?" I nodded, closed my laptop. "Uh-huh." She walked back into the house. And then, in the soft light coming from the hallway, I noticed something. A neck mark. High on her neck. Half hidden by the collar of her robe. She didn't even try to cover it. I didn't say a word. I just followed her inside. Still smiling. The irony was cruel. I had started digging for truth in the present, but what I found, what shattered me, was buried 20 years in the past, hiding in plain sight. It began with nostalgia. I was looking for something, some reminder that once Rachel had loved me without conditions or calculations. I thought the wedding video might help. I wanted to see her beginning again. Maybe to remember what we were. Maybe to make sense of what we'd become. The VHS tapes were still in a cardboard box in the den closet, right where we left them. Labeled in Rachel's careful handwriting, "Wedding. Honeymoon. Christmas '03. The ink had faded, but the memories hadn't. Not yet. I dusted off the projector, dimmed the lights, and slid in the wedding tape. The screen flickered. Music played. There we were, young, bright-eyed, full of promise. Rachel in her white gown, glowing. Me, grinning like I'd won the lottery. For a while, I was lost in it. The ceremony. Our vows. The dancing. Her laugh. The toasts. Familiar faces long gone now. I was right back in that rented ballroom, holding her hand, feeling like life was just starting. Then the camera shifted. It was filming the reception, panning across tables of smiling guests, clinking glasses, and bursts of applause. I assumed it was catching another toast or maybe a dance. But in the background, just off-center, something caught my eye. Rachel. Not with friends. Not sitting. She was standing near the edge of the room, beside a pale brick wall near a side entrance. Alone at first glance. Then I saw him. A young man in a server's uniform. White dress shirt. Black vest. He wasn't just talking to her. He was leaning close. One hand braced against the wall beside her head. Her hands were on his chest. Her posture wasn't casual. It was intimate. And then it happened. She kissed him. Not a quick peck. Not a drunken mistake. A slow, lingering kiss. Her hands slid up behind his neck, pulling him closer. His eyes were closed. She smiled through it. I sat upright, staring. My glass tipped and spilled across the carpet, but I barely noticed. I rewound the tape. Played it again. There it was, clear, undeniable. Rachel Harper on our wedding day, kissing another man in the middle of our reception. While I was 10, maybe 15 feet away. The camera panned on, oblivious. But I wasn't. I paused the frame, stared at her frozen expression. Her dress pristine, her cheeks flushed. I'd kissed her less than an hour earlier. Said vows. Slid a ring onto her finger. She had smiled at me with that same face. That same mouth. I didn't know how long I sat there. My hands trembled. My breath was shallow. I felt like I was watching someone else's life implode. Eventually, I got up. Went back to the tape box. Started pulling others. Honeymoon. Thanksgiving 2002. Lauren's second birthday. I watched them all, scanning every frame, looking for more cracks. But there weren't any. No lingering glances. No hidden touches. No other kisses. Just that one. That single moment that had rewritten the entire foundation of my marriage. Rachel had betrayed me before we'd even left the reception. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the living room with Max at my feet, the television off, the room dark. Bourbon in hand. I must have replayed the kiss 50 times in my head. She had been mine for less than 6 hours before she gave part of herself to someone else. The next day, I called Brandon. He was the closest thing I had to a brother. Chief of staff at the hospital. My sounding board, my compass. We met in the staff lounge. Him cradling a cup of black coffee. Me feeling like I hadn't slept in a decade. "Jesus," he said when he saw me. "You okay?" I didn't answer that. I didn't have the words. I sat down, stared straight ahead. "I need the name of a good divorce lawyer." Brandon blinked. Slow. "Wait, what?" I told him everything. About the hotel keycard. About the messages I baited Noah into. about the cameras, and finally about the tape. He listened. Quiet. Too quiet. He didn't interrupt. Didn't fidget. When I finished, he exhaled. That's rough. But, come on, man. You've been married 20 years. You're going to end everything over something that happened before your first anniversary. I narrowed my eyes. She's still seeing someone, Brandon. Yeah, but maybe it's just a phase. Maybe she was lonely. You've been working long hours. She's at home all day alone. You're defending her? I'm saying, maybe don't nuke your life over one bad moment on grainy video. That hit wrong. You ever notice? I asked slowly. How fast you're willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. He shrugged. She's your wife. I'm just trying to give you perspective. I nodded, stood. Thanks. I'll find a lawyer on my own. Brandon didn't stop me. He just went back to sipping his coffee. I walked out of the hospital, cold wind slapping my face, the snow beginning to fall. I had gone looking for clarity, and I got it. What I didn't expect was suspicion, not just of Rachel, but of Brandon too. There's a quiet kind of devastation that doesn't scream. It doesn't throw things or break down crying. It just sits inside your chest like a weight that won't move. That's what I felt walking out of the hospital that day. Not rage. Something colder. I couldn't stop thinking about Brandon. The way he'd listened. The things he didn't say. The way he defended Rachel a little too easily. A little too smoothly. Like he already knew which excuses would work. And why the hell did he look nervous? That night, Rachel was making pasta in the kitchen like it was any other Tuesday. She wore yoga pants and a soft gray sweater. Hair in a loose bun. Comfortable. Familiar. The way she had looked for years. And I couldn't look at her. Something wrong? She asked, glancing up. I shrugged. Just tired. She nodded as if that explained it. As if I wasn't watching the back of her neck, imagining the feel of someone else's hands on her skin. I didn't eat dinner. I told her I had charts to finish and retreated to the office. But I didn't look at charts. I stared at the photo on my desk. Me and Brandon at a golf tournament, laughing like idiots, sunburnt and smug. We'd been friends since med school. He'd been the one who introduced me to Rachel, actually. Back then she was working part-time in PR for a hospital campaign. Brandon knew her from a charity event and said she was sharp as hell and too smart for the room she's in. He wasn't wrong. I thought that was all it was, friendly matchmaking. But now, I didn't know. The next morning I tested something. I told Rachel I had to work late enough to miss dinner. She barely blinked. That's fine, she said. I was going to see Dana anyway. Dana. The same friend who, as far as I could tell, had been out of town for a month. I nodded, kissed her on the forehead, and left the house. But I didn't go to the hospital. I drove to the Rosewood Hotel. It was a guess, a reckless one, but it didn't feel random. I'd remembered the hotel keycard. Room 403. I knew she had been there more than once, and something told me if I waited long enough, I'd see what I needed to see. At 6:46 p.m., I did. Rachel stepped out of a black car wearing a coat I hadn't seen in years. Form-fitting, elegant, like something out of a magazine. Her heels clicked across the pavement. She looked up at the hotel sign once before heading inside. I stayed in my car, heart thudding in my ears. Then, at 7-Eleven, another car pulled up. Brandon. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. He got out, adjusted his tie in the side mirror like he was going to a meeting, and strolled into the hotel as casually as a man picking up takeout. I sat there, frozen, the pieces snapping together so fast it felt physical. Brandon knew. He didn't just know. He was the reason I was being told to forgive her, to be understanding, to calm down, because if I dug too deep, if I blew it all up, he'd burn too. I started shaking, not out of anger, out of something worse. Clarity. It was always Brandon. Every late-night text, every long staff meeting that conveniently overlapped with Rachel's disappearances. Every knowing look he gave me when we talked about how hard marriage could be. He wasn't giving advice. He was covering his tracks. I watched that hotel entrance like a hawk. I imagined storming in, dragging them both out, making a scene. But I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I still had the hidden camera set up in our house. The one in the living room bookshelf. The one in the garage. But this time I needed something more. I created a new profile online. A man who didn't exist, handsome, rich, just the right amount of charming. Someone Rachel couldn't resist. A fantasy. I made sure the pictures were flawless. Used an AI generator to mask any trace of the real person beneath them. Then I messaged her. Just one line. You looked stunning tonight. She replied within the hour. Thank you, do I know you? And just like that we were off. Regret doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it shows up late, trailing behind you in silence, like cigarette smoke clinging to your coat after you've already walked away. Rachel was changing. Subtly. Slowly. I could see it in the way she moved through the house. Her steps were softer, like she was afraid to disturb something fragile. Her eyes lingered longer when she looked at me, like she was waiting for a question I wasn't asking anymore. But I didn't confront her. I listened. I let the false version of me, the one in her inbox, do all the talking. Over 2 weeks, our messages grew. She sent longer replies. Started flirting back. Then reminiscing. About our early days. About what she used to feel before life got routine. I asked her through that anonymous digital mask if she had ever regretted anything. Her reply came at midnight. Sometimes I think I broke something I didn't know how to fix. David used to look at me like I was the only thing in the room. Then life happened. I don't even know who we are anymore. Maybe I messed it all up. Maybe I was always going to. I stared at that message for a long time. It was the closest she'd come to admitting it. And yet, she wasn't telling me. She was telling a ghost. A man who didn't exist. A version of love she could entertain without consequence. That's what hurt? Not that she cheated. Not that she lied. But that the most honest version of Rachel I'd heard in months was directed at a stranger she thought might love her. The next day, I watched her more closely. She was in the backyard, trimming the gardenias she hadn't cared about in 2 years. I brought her a cup of tea, green jasmine, her favorite. She smiled. Thanks. Nice out here, I said. Yeah. Quiet. We stood like that for a moment. Me in the doorway. Her among the flowers. It would have looked peaceful to anyone driving by. Do you ever think about who we used to be? She asked suddenly, not turning to face me. I didn't answer. She clipped another stem. I do. Lately. I stepped closer slowly. Why now? She hesitated. I don't know. Maybe because I'm scared I forgot who that girl was. The one you married. I looked at her hands. Steady. Clipping carefully. Like she was handling something delicate. I haven't forgotten, I said. I just don't think she's been around in a while. That got her. Just a little. Her grip tightened and the clippers snapped louder than they needed to. I'm sorry if I've been distant, she said, still not looking at me. Things just feel heavy lately. Maybe they are. We left it at that. That night, I checked the cameras again. Nothing suspicious in the house. But her phone lit up at 1:14 a.m. She messaged the fake profile again. Are you real? Because it feels like you know me better than anyone. I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I printed out the entire thread. Every message. Every photo. I slid it all into a manila envelope unsealed. Put it in my desk drawer. Not as a weapon. As a mirror. Because sometimes people need to see the wreckage before they understand what they've done. The next morning, something strange happened. I came downstairs to find her crying. It was early. Barely light out. She was sitting on the edge of the couch in one of my old flannels, eyes red, hair loose, holding her phone in her lap like it had betrayed her. I froze in the doorway. You okay? She startled. Wiped her eyes fast. Yeah, I just bad dream. I nodded, saying nothing. But I watched her all day. She hovered. Made lunch for the first time in months. Folded laundry that wasn't hers. Even refilled the bird feeder out back, which hadn't been touched since spring. All day she kept glancing at me. Wanting to say something. She never did. That night, the anonymous inbox was empty. No message from her. No typing bubble. Nothing. It was like she sensed something was watching. Something real. I stood at the kitchen window after midnight looking at our backyard. It was cold. Windy. The gardenias had lost their bloom. And I realized something. I didn't want her apology anymore. I wanted to see if she could change. Not because she got caught, but because she knew she was lost. The envelope sat on the kitchen table for 2 days. Rachel hadn't touched it. Of course she saw it. I had left it between the salt shaker and the vase of wilting tulips. Exactly where she placed her coffee mug every morning. The first morning she pushed it aside as if it were an unwanted letter. The second morning, she didn't even look at it. But she knew. You could feel it in the house. The way the air would shrink when we passed each other in the hallway. The way her voice became softer, as if the volume could break the thin ice on which we both pretended not to stand. On the third day, I stopped pretending. That evening I came home early. Max met me on the doorstep, tail wagging, not knowing that the man he was greeting was not the one who left in the morning. Rachel stood at the sink, rinsing vegetables she hadn't planned to cook. Her phone rang on the table. She flinched. I picked up the envelope and put it next to her. "Read it," I said. She didn't look up. "What's in it?" "You already know." Her hands remained under the water, cold, senseless. Finally, she turned off the tap and reached for the envelope. She pulled out the pages. She began to read. The silence was deafening. She slowly turned each page. Methodically, every message, every timestamp, every carefully constructed lie she'd sent to a man she didn't know was me. Her breath caught on the fourth page. She skipped the last few. She put them down with trembling hands. When she finally spoke, her voice broke. "How long have you known?" "From the charger behind the chair. From the nightly texts. Since you started humming songs that don't belong to us." Her eyes were wet. "I never meant." "Don't," I interrupted. "Calm down. Finally. Don't hurt us both with this." She looked like she wanted to say more. But what could she say? That it wasn't what it looked like? That it meant nothing? It meant everything. "It wasn't just about Noah," I said. "Or Brandon. Or someone I don't know about yet. It was the moment you stopped being with me and started moving in orbit." She swallowed. "I didn't want it to go that far." "You didn't want it to matter," I said. "You wanted attention without consequences. You wanted to be missed without missing anyone. You wanted a stranger to think you were still worth chasing." The tears rolled freely, but I didn't move. "You were telling this fake version of me things you hadn't told me in years. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore," she whispered. "I made sure you didn't," I replied. "I was away a lot. I understand that. But I was still here. I was always here." She reached for my hand. I didn't pull it away. "I don't know what to say," she said. "Good," I told her. "Because now it's my turn." I pulled out a second envelope from my coat pocket. This one was sealed. Heavier. Legal. Her face turned white. "I'm not doing this to punish you," I said. "I'm doing this because whatever this is right now, it's not a marriage. It's not love. It's pretending between two strangers." She stared at the envelope as if it might burn her. "David, please, can we try to go to a counselor? Anything? We had counseling 3 novels ago," I said. "Don't tell me you didn't. I saw the video. The wedding day. The kiss with the drunken waiter." Her mouth opened. Then it closed. No denial. No sigh. Only a slow stoppage of breath. As if the scaffolding of her excuses had finally given way. "It was before it all started." "It all started," I said. "And you've been editing history ever since." Silence fell again. But this time it wasn't thick. It was empty. Finally, I stood up. "I'm going to stay at the Marriott until we get the kids settled. I'll sort out the finances. You'll be fine." Rachel didn't move. As I walked to the door, Max walking beside me, she asked the one question I hadn't expected. "Do you still love me?" I stopped. The light in the hallway flickered once, just enough to cast a long shadow on the floor. "I did," I answered. "Enough to survive the first betrayal. Maybe even the second. But over time, love turns into something else. Survival. Silence. A habit." Then she cried, not loudly. Just a low, trembling cry. The Marriott smelled like lemon-scented regret and recycled air. My room had 2 queen beds, a window facing the parking lot, and a lamp that flickered if I breathed too hard. I'd been there 3 nights. Didn't unpack. Didn't shave. Didn't speak unless someone asked my name or whether I wanted the eggs scrambled or folded. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was surgical. At night, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling tiles, thinking about the cracks in the drywall back home, the ones I'd meant to fix, The hallway paint, she said, was too beige. The humming I used to think was just a habit. Funny how clear it all becomes when the volume drops. The first night I left, Rachel didn't call. I half expected her to. Not to apologize, no, that wasn't her style, but to check if I was okay. Which really meant checking if she still had some piece of me on the line. But there was nothing. By the second night, I stopped expecting the phone to ring. That was somehow worse. The hardest part wasn't losing her, it was realizing how long I'd been gone already. My body was still in the house, still filling space at the dinner table, still paying the bills, but me, the man who looked at her like she was his favorite thing, he had been dying in slow motion for years. I just hadn't signed the death certificate yet. On the third night, I got a text. Not from Rachel. From Lauren, our oldest. Mom's been in her room all day. Didn't eat dinner. You okay, Dad? I stared at that message for a long time. My daughter was 14. She shouldn't have to hold emotional space for her parents. I typed back something simple. I'm okay. Just sorting things out. I love you. I meant it. Every word. Even if I didn't believe it for myself. Later that night, I opened my laptop and went through the folder again. The messages. The footage. The wedding video. I don't know why. It wasn't morbid curiosity. It was something else, like touching a bruise just to remind yourself it's still there. I paused on a still frame. Rachel in her wedding dress, leaning against the wall, kissing that waiter. Behind her, blurry and out of focus, I could just barely make out my own reflection in a window. Smiling. Toasting. Clueless. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Just a soft, hollow thing that barely escaped my throat. I wasn't angry anymore. I was embarrassed. Not because she cheated. Not even because Brandon had snuck into our life like a parasite wearing my best friend's face. No. I was embarrassed that I didn't see it sooner. That I ignored the signs. That I let my own hope become a weapon used against me. The fourth day, I sat at the edge of the bed for an hour just deciding whether to go back to the house to grab a few more clothes. In the end, I didn't. I wore the same shirt I'd worn the day I left. It smelled like old bourbon and second chances that never showed up. I went for a walk. Just blocks, really. Around the perimeter of the hotel. Past a Waffle House and a closed-down dry cleaner. There was a group of teenagers skateboarding in the parking lot next door. They laughed loudly without apology. One of them fell. The others roared with laughter. The kid popped back up, smiling, brushing gravel off his palms like it was nothing. And I envied him. Not for his youth. Not for his future. But for the way he got to fall and knew he could get back up. I didn't feel that certainty anymore. I felt hollowed out. Like someone had come through with a backhoe and cleared everything warm and familiar from my chest, leaving only echoes. That night, I dreamed I was back in our bedroom. Rachel was humming. The same tune. That godforsaken melody that now felt like a dirge. In the dream, I tried to speak. Tried to reach for her. But I had no hands. No voice. I was just there, watching as she turned to Noah and smiled. Then the bed dissolved. And I was alone again. I woke up to birdsong. Not the kind they pipe into spas. Real birdsong, messy, overlapping, unapologetic. Somewhere just beyond the cracked window of my Marriott room, the world had started again. And for the first time in months, I wanted to catch up. The room still smelled faintly of old coffee and my own exhaustion. But something felt different. Not lighter, exactly. Just clearer. Like someone had finally cleaned the glass between me and the rest of the world. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting the silence stretch. There was no buzz from my phone. No messages. No requests for forgiveness. Rachel, it seemed, had finally stopped humming. I didn't miss the sound. I got dressed, not because I had somewhere to be, but because I was ready to move. I didn't pack. I didn't think about the house. I didn't think about Rachel or Brandon or who betrayed who first. I thought about me. I got in the car and drove for hours with no destination. I passed landmarks of my old life, coffee shops we used to visit, parks where we held the kids' birthday parties. I let the memories rise, then pass. I didn't chase them down or wallow in them. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't announce its exit. One day you realize you've stopped feeding it. Eventually, I found myself in Lanestone, the town I hadn't visited in over 2 decades. Nothing had changed except the names on the storefronts. The same rusted benches. The same chipped mural outside the bakery. It looked like it had been painted with hope by people who'd never left. I walked into the old diner, and there she was, the same waitress, or maybe a twin of the one who served me eggs the morning after my boards. Back again, she said, pouring coffee. You look older. I earned it, I said. And smiled. Really smiled. I stayed for a while. Read a newspaper. Watched an old man feed birds outside like it was his sacred duty. I didn't check my phone once. Before I left, I walked the 2 blocks to a tiny park behind the church. I found a bench facing the trees. Sat down. Just breathed. And in that moment, with the wind shifting through the bare branches and the faint sound of children laughing somewhere nearby, it finally hit me. I didn't lose. Not really. Rachel lost a man who would have given her anything: forgiveness, grace, loyalty, a second chance. Brandon lost a friend who once would have stepped in front of traffic for him. I lost the illusion. But what I gained, what I'm still gaining, is something stronger than any of that. Myself. I'm not defined by who left or who lied. I'm defined by who I choose to be after the dust settles. I still believe in loyalty. In love. In building something from nothing and standing by it when it's tested. That's not weakness. That's character. And if someone else can't match that, then they don't get to stand next to me. It took me 20 years, a shattered marriage, and a hotel full of ghosts to understand the one truth I'll never forget. The person who shows up even when they're tired, even when it's hard, is worth more than every fantasy combined. Next time, that person is going to be me.